Story recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain an action, horror, and sci-fi film called Species. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. In the 1970s, the project known as Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence sends a message to outer space in the hopes of communicating with other life forms. Decades later, the researchers receive a reply from an unknown source. With the new information, researchers have begun conducting experiments in a government laboratory in Dugway, Utah. Soon after the researchers receive the messages, a young child named Syl wakes up in a glass containment cell as scientists in the lab are observing her. When she looks up, she sees Xavier Fitch, who leads the research team watching over her. She starts to panic when two lab personnel carrying cyanide tanks enter the room and install them into pipes leading to her cell. Fitch mouths off, "I'm sorry," to Syl before giving the signal to release the gas. As tears flow from his eyes, Fitch turns away from Syl and watches her on the monitor instead. Syl disappears into the smoke, but it didn't take long before she uses her brute strength to break out of her cage. Fitch immediately sounds the alarm to alert the guards. The lab personnel chokes on the cyanide seeping out of the cell as she runs toward the door. Military personnel brings their K-9 units to scurry after Syl as she climbs on the fence and leaves the laboratory. As the military conducts a perimeter search, Syl gets on a freight train and falls asleep. A drifter tries to assault her as she dreams, but she throws him to the wall and kills him. When Syl arrives at the train station, she enters a store and observes the people buying groceries with cash and credit card. She leaves the store when the clerk notices her, and she takes a bag from a cart before boarding a passenger train. Syl enters a compartment and takes out a portable TV from the bag. Later, she wanders around the train while evading the guards to look for money and other things she could use. As she is about to eat, a conductor walks into the compartment to ask for her tickets. The conductor notices that she looks too young to be traveling alone, so she allows Syl to pay half price. When Fitch discovers the dead drifter on the freight train, he decides to assemble a team to hunt down Syl confidentially to avoid public scrutiny. After waking up from a nightmare, Syl suddenly feels something crawling beneath her skin as she eats some chocolate fudge. When she looks at the mirror in the bathroom, she sees tentacles breaking out of her body. Syl cries in fear as the tentacles pin her to a corner and cover her whole body. The team assembled by Fitch soon arrives at the lab for a briefing about their top secret assignment. Dan Smithson, an empath, tells the other members that he can determine the motivations of criminals when they commit atrocious acts. Dr. Stephen Arden, an anthropologist, discloses that he is an expert in cross-cultural behavior. Dr. Laura Baker introduces herself as a molecular biologist. She then asks another man on the team about his profession. In response, Preston Lennox hints that things have taken a turn for the worse if the government requires his services. When Stephen asks Preston about his field of expertise, he gives an ambiguous answer, saying he provides a solution to some of the government's problems. Dan deduces that Preston hunts down people. The conductor knocks on Syl's compartment again due to the noise from her portable TV, but Syl is not there. When she goes to the bathroom to look for her, she is horrified to see the large cocoon on the wall. Suddenly, a tentacle shoots out of the cocoon and hooks onto the conductor's neck. Not long, Syl emerges as a full-grown female. She steps over the conductor's lifeless body as she leaves the bathroom. Fitch arrives at the lab and briefs the team about the operation. He reveals that the researchers from SETI have received two messages from an unknown source in 1993. The researchers assume that they are communicating with friendly life forms because the first message was a catalyst that would allow the production of infinite amounts of energy from methane. The second message was a sequence of DNA and instructions on how to splice it with human genes. Government scientists injected the new DNA sequence into 100 human ova, and one of those birthed Syl. Fitch showed them how rapidly Syl grew. He said that the scientists decided to make her a female because they're supposedly more docile and controllable. Preston scoffs at the notion, suggesting that scientists haven't met a lot of women. Fitch notes that the research team began having apprehensions about the experiment, so they decided to gas her. Fitch notifies them that Syl had already killed a drifter since her escape. Dan infers that they'll find other bodies because Syl is a predator. Preston guesses that Fitch wants them to kill her because nobody has ever called him to bring back a person alive. As Syl roams around Los Angeles, Fitch and the team discover the dead conductor on the train. Laura surmises that Syl must be storing up energy because of all the food she ate. After seeing the cocoon, Laura guesses that Syl is probably fully grown by now. Preston says the search team probably had a hard time finding her because they're still looking for a child. Preston asks a Fitch's aide to get the conductor's ID and credit card details on the computer because they're not on the train. As the team checks into a hotel, Fitch tells the team that they have set up a new lab nearby. Laura suggests growing another alien without splicing it with human DNA so they could observe it in its proper form and find its vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, Syl gets herself a room at a motel and pays with cash. At their new lab, Laura introduces the alien DNA into a cell. However, the camera goes out as she is piercing the cell. She asks for a replacement camera, but she needs help installing it. Fitch says he can't call a technician because the lab is classified, so Preston volunteers to help Laura. As soon as Laura activates the new camera, Fitch sees that the organism is already starting to grow. They quickly seal the cover of the isolation unit, but Preston drops a bolt through the grate. As the organism gets larger, Preston and Laura run to the door in panic, yelling at Fitch to open it. However, Fitch refuses for fear that the organism would get out. The creature starts to break through the isolator, so Preston tries to hold it in. Fitch knows that he won't be able to hold it, so he tells him to get out of the way so he can burn the creature. Fitch pushes the button to light the isolation unit on fire, but it was not enough to kill the organism. Fitch starts the sequence to burn the whole room and tells Preston that they only have 2 minutes to kill the creature. Preston tries to burn it by using the gas line as a flamethrower. The organism hides under the pipes, so Preston breaks a tube and repeatedly stabs it. After it stops moving, Preston asks Fitch to open the door, thinking that the organism is dead. But Fitch still refuses as he realizes that it's still growing rapidly. Dan implores him to let them out before the room bursts into flames, but Fitch insists on following the lab protocol. Dan shoves Fitch away from the console, and Steven pushes the button to open the door. Laura and Preston make it out just before the fire engulfs the whole room. Back at the motel, Sil asks the clerk where she could find a man, so he recommends a club called It. Before she leaves, he asks for her credit card and swipes it on the reader. Fitch contacts Preston from the lobby, telling him that the conductor's stolen card turned up in a Hollywood motel. Inside the club, a man tries to hook up with Sil, but a woman interrupts them. Sil follows the woman into the bathroom as she prepares to leave with the man. When the woman enters a stall, Sil goes to the next room. Suddenly, Sil breaks the wall with her hand and yanks her spinal cord. The team soon arrives at the motel and checks the grainy security footage. When Fitch asks Dan if he has any idea where Sil went, the clerk informs them that he suggested the ID Club to her. Meanwhile, Sil has taken her top off and seduces another man. The team soon arrives at the establishment and discovers the dead woman in the bathroom. They learn from the bouncer that a woman matching Sil's description left with a man named Robbie. Robbie takes Sil to his house and tries to get intimate with her in the bathroom. But when he touches Sil, she suddenly becomes uneasy and tells him to drive her back to the club. Robbie insists on having intercourse with her, so she caves in. While they kiss, Sil suddenly clenches his head and thrusts her tongue through Robbie's skull. The team arrives at Robbie's place and sees him lying on the ground. Laura is convinced that Sil is trying to mate. Preston notices that Robbie is still wearing his pants and concludes that he couldn't get intimate with Sil. Laura surmises that she sensed that something is wrong with Robbie, so she suggests testing him for any disease. Laura soon finds an insulin bottle in the trash and concludes that Sil rejected him because he's diabetic. Sil goes back to the motel, but she drives away when she sees the authorities looking for her. The following day, Sil wakes up on the beach after dreaming about mating with another alien. She drives away, but the car soon runs out of fuel, so she leaves it behind. As she walks the street, a man on a skateboard catcalls her, not paying attention to the road. A car swerves to avoid hitting him, but the vehicle hits Sil instead. The car drives away, but another man helps Sil and takes her to a hospital. Back at the lab, they try to enhance the security footage from the motel, but they still can't get a clear image of Sil. Fitch receives a call and learns that Robbie's car was found in Santa Monica. At the hospital, John Carey, who came to help Sil, pays for Sil's medical bill with his credit card. While preparing Sil for an x-ray, the doctor sees the injury on her shoulder healing rapidly. The doctor is astonished and tries to follow as she leaves, but the nurse calls him due to an emergency. Sil goes back to the hospital lobby and leaves the hospital with John. As the team inspects Robbie's car, an agent tells them that a doctor at the hospital just reported a weird story. Laura and Preston stop by the hospital and confirm that Sil was there after talking to the doctor. They ask the receptionist for any information about the man who took her in, so she gives them an imprint of John's credit card. They use the credit card information to track down John's address and phone number. Meanwhile, John and Sil are already getting intimate in the hot tub when Preston and Laura arrive at his house. When they knock at the door, John tries to answer, but Sil holds on to him, saying she wants to have a baby. John is shocked by the proposal, so he tries to get out of the hot tub. As Preston and Laura try to find a way inside, Sil starts to morph as she holds down John on the tub. She inserts her tentacle into John's mouth as he drowns. Upon entering the house, Laura and Preston quietly look around the backyard for any signs of Sil. When they get to the tub, they only find John's dead body. Sil hides on a tree outside and observes Preston as he searches the house. Fitch arrives and tells them to make sure if Sil is not there anymore. Sil soon changes back into her human form and goes outside without any clothes on. When she sees a woman getting into her car, she gets in the passenger's seat and asks for her help. The team finds a Polaroid picture of John and Sil, but the image still doesn't give them a good look at her. An agent tells them that there's no evidence of semen in the hot tub. While the team continues their investigation, Sil drives back to the house and reads Fitch's lips as he tells the team to go back to the club the following night. Steven says she might not return to the club because she didn't find any suitable mate there. Fitch says he'd rather try looking for her there than sit and wait at the lab. The following day, Sil wakes up at the house of the woman she kidnapped the previous night. When the woman begs Sil to let her go, Sil leaves the room and grabs a scissor. The woman thanks her, thinking Sil will set her free, but to her shock, Sil uses it to cut her thumb. Sil drops her thumb on the bag and waits for her thumb to regenerate. She then cuts her thumb and throws it on the garbage can outside the house. Later on, Sil drives to a gas station and fills up 2 containers with fuel. She then steals another vehicle and transfers the gas containers from the abducted woman's car. As the team waits for Sil inside the club, Dan goes out on the streets and suddenly gets the feeling that Sil is there. When Sil appears, Dan runs back inside to alert the team. She runs to her car and drives it out of the parking lot, with the abducted woman riding on the passenger seat. Preston and Laura chase after her, with 2 helicopters following them. When they reach a dead end, Sil drives off a steep hill and jumps out of the car. The vehicle keeps going until it hits an electrical power transformer and explodes with the kidnapped woman inside. The helicopter blasts the car with 2 missiles to make sure that Sil doesn't survive. Sil, however, remains at large and still wants to find a mate. Preston is unconvinced that Sil is dead, but Fitch brushes off his concern. An agent tells Fitch that they found a severed thumb on the door that got ripped off. Laura tells them to bring it to the lab and test it. Meanwhile, Sil goes back to the woman's house to change the color of her hair. The team goes back to the hotel to celebrate their success. Laura invites Preston to dance and tells him that she wants to keep seeing him. Preston, however, is soon distracted by a blonde woman at the bar. He approaches her and grabs her arm, only to see that she's not Sil when she turns around. Laura stresses that Sil is dead, noting that the tests on the thumb prove that she was the one who crashed in the car earlier. When Laura goes to the bathroom, Sil follows her and asks if she can try some of her perfume. After leaving the toilet, Laura tells the team that she's going to bed. Dan tells Preston that Laura still wants to see him, so he decides to follow her. Sil rides the lift with him and asks to push the button to the 10th floor. Preston smells Sil's perfume and tells her that he likes it. When Preston gets out of the elevator, Sil sneaks out and follows him. Preston knocks on Laura's door as she was getting ready for bed. After Laura invites him in, Preston puts the Do Not Disturb sign on the knob. Sil listens by the door and hears them kissing. Sil decides to enter the room next to Laura's, pretending to be housekeeping. She continues listening from the wall as Laura and Preston make love. Stephen soon arrives in his room and finds Sil there, but he doesn't recognize her. Sil tells Stephen that she stole a key to get inside his room. She starts kissing Stephen and shoves him to the bed. Meanwhile, Dan suddenly senses that Sil is around, so he stops by Stephen's room and tries to get a vibe. When he perceives that Sil is copulating with Stephen, he knocks on Laura's room to tell Preston. After Stephen and Sil finish their intercourse, Sil tells him that she already feels something inside her womb. Stephen laughs at her, but she takes her hand and lets him feel her belly. Stephen soon realizes that he's with Sil, but she covers his mouth and kills him. When the team arrives at the door, Sil gets out of the room through the wall. Preston chases her and asks Laura to come with him, saying they have to catch her before she gives birth. When they reach the garage, they see an open hole in the steel door. The team arms themselves with flamethrowers before they go inside. As they go further down the tunnel, they come across a dead body and conclude that Sil had been there. They soon see an open maintenance hole and blast it with the flamethrower before going inside. Preston asks Dan which way she went, but he isn't sure, so they split up. Fitch suddenly notices bubbles on the water and follows it. Before he could fire at it, Sil emerges and snatches Fitch. When the rest of the team reach the area, Fitch is already dead. As the group continues the search, Sil hides above the pipes. When they pass by her hiding place, she suddenly jumps down and swims away. Dan sees an opening in the tunnel and senses that Sil went through it. Preston shoots the hole with his flamethrower before they go in. Meanwhile, Sil starts to give birth as they find their way into a cavern. Preston tries to look for a way to ambush Sil, so he instructs Laura and Dan to fire at her once they see her. Dan tries to go further up the cave and sees a boy moving. While Dan looks for another way to reach him, the child snatches a rat with his tongue. Upon reaching the boy, he tries to call him over. The child shoots his tongue out, causing Dan to fall. As Laura makes her way to rescue Dan, she falls into the pool of oil and gets stuck. The child morphs into its alien form and attacks Dan, so he shoots it with the flamethrower. The alien child falls into the pool of oil in flames. Sil emerges and shrieks as she sees the child burning. Laura struggles to get out of the pool as Dan hangs onto the edge of a rock. Meanwhile, Sil grabs Preston with her tentacles from above, but he manages to cut it with a knife. Sil jumps down and lunges at Preston, but before she could reach him, he shoots her multiple times until she falls into the flaming pool. Laura and Preston pull Dan up, but Sil grabs his foot. Preston holds on to Dan with one hand and loads a shotgun with the other. He then tells Dan to duck and blows off Sil's head. After the group leaves the cave, a rat starts gnawing on Sil's severed tentacle. Moments later, it starts to mutate and snags another rat with its tongue. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.